When SPSS first opens, the default view is the Data View tab. Before entering raw data, it's necessary to start in the Variable View tab. Variables need to be defined before raw data can be entered. To get to the Variable View, click the Variable View tab down here in the lower left corner of the screen. In this example, I will define variables for a fictitious study that looks at the relationship of gender, age, and GPA on whether or not the respondent shops online. To define my first variable, I'll click on the first cell under Name and type Gender. Then hit Enter. Immediately you'll see some default values fill in the row. Also, SPSS has some special requirements for variable names. They need to be short and precise. Unfortunately, SPSS doesn't allow variable names to begin with a number or include any special characters like an ampersand, asterisk, or $sign. Since the name column has these limitations, the label column can be used to type the full description of the variable name. In fact, it's a good idea to get in the habit of being descriptive by identifying labels with each variable. Precise labels will help you down the road in interpreting data in SPSS output. They can also be handy when entering data. I'll show you an example of that in a little bit. Returning to our example here, for the variable gender, I'll assign the label student gender. The second variable in our study is age. So the second cell under Name, I'll type age and hit Enter. Default values fill in the row. The descriptive label I'll give to the variable age will be student age. The third variable in my study is GPA, so the third cell under the column Name, I'll type in GPA. Once again, I'll type in GPA and hit Enter. And once again, default values fill in the row. The descriptive label I'll give to the variable GPA will be student GPA. The fourth and final variable in my study is whether or not the respondent shops online. So in the fourth cell under the Name column, I'll type S online and hit Enter. Default values fill in the row. The descriptive label I'll give to this variable will be Do you shop online? Now, because the variables gender and S online have more than one possible response, I'll need to assign values to those two particular variables. I'll slide my mouse over to the Values column, and making sure I'm in the Gender row, I'll click on the word None. What becomes visible in this cell is ... otherwise known as an ellipsis. Click on the ... and a value window opens. When I type in the raw data on the Data View tab, SPSS needs numeric values to run calculations. So for this reason, I'll need to numerically code the two possible answers to the variable gender. So I'll assign the number 1 to mean male, then click Add, and I'll assign the number 2 to mean female, and click Add. When I'm finished, I click OK, and you'll see the information I just typed was added to the values cell. If I ever need to go back into this area to remind myself of the values I assigned or to make edits, I can simply click on the ... and make my changes. The second variable that needs assigned values is S_Online. Again, I'll slide my mouse over to the values column, and making sure I'm in the S_Online row, click the word None. Next, I'll click the ... and I'll assign the number 1 to mean yes. Click Add, and the number 2 to mean no, and click Add, and then click OK. At this point, I've defined all the variables in this fictitious study, so I'm ready to type in raw data. To type in data, I'll need to switch over to Data View by clicking on this Data View tab in the lower left corner of the workspace. In Data View, rows represent people, respondents, or observations, and columns represent the different variables in the study. Once variables are defined, their names appear as column headers, as they do here in the Data View. Since we just defined the variable gender, age, GPA, and if they shop online, those columns are now appropriately titled in the Data View. Next, I'll enter fictitious data. In this study, I'll pretend I had 10 respondents. The first respondent was male, so I'll type in the number 1. Under gender, he reported his age as 20 and a 3.5 GPA. And reported that he does not shop online, so I will enter a 2. Next, I'll go ahead and fill in the rest of the fictitious data for 9 more respondents. Okay, now all my data has been entered. A couple tips I want to mention. Remember the restrictions I mentioned when naming your variables when we were in the variable view? The variable names need to be short and precise. They can't begin with a number or include any special characters such as an ampersand, asterisk, or $sign. Remember I mentioned if you need to explain your variable name further to use the label column. Well, if you need more explanation of a variable name while you're typing in data here in the Data View, hover your mouse over the variable name and a box will appear with the label information you typed in while defining the label. This is one way variable labels come in handy. A second tip worth mentioning is the Value Labels button in the toolbar. The button looks like a price tag, and it's right here. Clicking the Value Label button while you're in Data View toggles between 2 views. One that displays the coded numbers that were entered, and then one that displays how the coded numbers are defined. Right now we're viewing the coded numbers. If I click on the Value Label button, the 1s and 2s change to male or female for gender, and yes or no for shop online, according to how I define those numbers in the variable view. If I click on the Value Label again, it shows the coded numbers. At this point, all the data is entered, so all that is left to do is save your file.